Welcome to Sisters Inc., our show for and about women business owners, brought to you by Black Enterprise. I'm your host, Elisa Gums. Black women are the fastest growing group of entrepreneurs in America. And on every episode of Sisters Inc., we sit down with one successful CEO and share how she slays the challenges of being a Black woman in business. Today's episode is all about diversifying fashion for the next generation. We're chatting with Shaw Bernard, the founder and president of STRUT Models, a Black owned, woman owned modeling agency right here in New York City. Welcome to Sisters Inc., Shaw, and thanks so much for sitting down with us.
Hi, good morning. Welcome. Thank you so much, Alyssa. I'm so happy to be here with you.
Shaw, you're a former model yourself with a 20-year career in the industry. Can you share with us how you got into modeling and what your experience was like as a Black model?
Sure. So I hail from the Twin Islands of Trinidad and Tobago. That's where I was born, and now I can say I'm was raised in New York because I've lived here longer than my time in Trinidad. But I am still Trini to the bone, and so I moved here at the tender age of 14, and I just started getting those questions. Are you a model? Are you a model? Are you a model? Or do you play basketball? And neither were true at the time. And I didn't consider either, honestly. I really wanted to become a lawyer. That was just where my aspirations were set. And so, after all those questions consistently, because at 14, I was already like 6 feet. My both my parents are tall, and so I kind of didn't have a choice. Genetically, that's just how things worked out for me. And so I just started getting those questions, and eventually I was like, okay, well, people keep asking me this. Maybe I need to look into it. And so I did, and I went to actually Barbizon was the first kind of intro into finding out about the modeling world. And when I went with my mom, I remember them quoting us a price to start like the modeling school. And it's not something that we could have afforded at the time. And so I spent from 14 to 22 because I signed my first modeling agency contract at 22. But how many ever years that's in between, my math is not the best, but um, I spent those years trying to figure it out like everybody else that's trying to be an artist. It's like, and then it was way before social media too, so there really wasn't any clear guide. You couldn't really Google anything. I think we were still at dial-up stage, AOL.com. So I just navigated through connecting with photographers or makeup artists or up and coming designers, and that's really how it all started.
And what was your experience like? We've heard some horror stories about what it was like to be a woman of color in fashion in those times. Was that your experience as well?
Absolutely. I think I'm kind of like a broken record at this point with this response, but you know I say that I was not afforded the opportunity to have the type of career I could have had as a model simply because I am a Black woman. I was in that era when the Black model basically was erased, and there was the one girl. So I remember girls like Chanel Iman, like Cicely Lopez. Joan Smalls came in a little later, but we were like, we're all kind of the same age, and I remember seeing their success and being inspired, but knowing that there wasn't an opportunity because they were already there. And I've had experiences going into agencies being told like, we already have one, or being told ridiculous things like you're too fat. And I'm thinking to myself, what? I People still think I'm skinny now, and I'm just like, guys, it's the Spanx. Thanks, Sarah Blakely. Like, you're saving my life, but and I was significantly skinnier then, and so I just was confused, but I also do remember, when I did sign with my agency, and it was a boutique agency, um, similarly to what I'm doing. But, I remember going into spaces and going into castings and, um, not sometimes not even being able to see the designer like the other girls, like just drop a com card, someone would carry it in and they would be like, okay, no, no thanks, and I have memories of standing on the street corner. Every time I pass by that corner, I think I get PTSD. Because I remember just the tears, I remember all of the tears that I cried, honestly. Because I was just in this weird place, honestly, of like the public opinion of me, in the streets. Oh my gosh, are you a model? You're so beautiful. You should be a model, right? And so you get bombarded with that, and then you go into a room with the people who are the decision makers, essentially, because a rando on the street could say whatever, and that can like boost your ego, like, oh yeah, okay, okay. But then when you go into the decision making rooms, which are the agencies, and be told that no, you're not what we're looking for, we already have one of you, or designers, and can I share with you that it wasn't even only, white designers that I was being turned away from. I have experiences of being turned away by Black designers because it was such a blackout, really, that even Black designers weren't using models of color, right? And that was really painful. So I've experienced it fully, and it's part of the reason that I'm so passionate about what I'm doing with Strut. Just last night in preparation for this, I said to a friend of mine, I said, I don't understand how an industry that has caused me so much pain and hasn't always embraced me fully, somehow I've dedicated my life to it. It's weird. It's so weird. And every time I try to get away from it, honestly, I'm like literally, even in this position now, there are moments where I'm like, I'm done. I walked into the office this morning, and Mondays are like very Monday here. It was just like flooded, and it's all also getting ready to be Fashion Week. So we're dealing with all kinds of things. And I looked at my staff and I was like, why do we do this? Like why? Like why do we subject ourselves to this? Because it truly is a lot. And even for me, as a Black woman, it's even more. But somehow this, I feel like, has been a calling on my life, because I promise you, Elisa, like I try to get away from this so many times. I've tried and I've tried and tried again, and here I am 20 years later, just still here. So I guess I'm
Yeah.
supposed to be doing it.
Yes, I guess you are right where you are supposed to be. But speaking of the fact that it's a calling on your life, you could have done many things, when you decided that you were done being a model. What is it that made you want to start an agency?
You know, what made me want to start an agency? So here's the thing. I'm honestly always wanted to be an entrepreneur, a boss babe, a badass, woman. Like my idol was Joan from Girlfriends, right? Like she was a lawyer. And I'm thinking, okay, I'm gonna be like Joan. I'm gonna be, successful, probably single, but I'll like travel the world and I'll have no children. And that is just not the way my life turned out. I didn't become a lawyer. I did get a degree in criminology. I had a husband at one point. I am a mother. I have a son. So my Joan aspirations just did not equate,
Well,
But the one thing that did happen is becoming an entrepreneur. And, I didn't know what I wanted to do. Like I just knew I wanted to be in business somehow. I didn't really have a clear path as to how that would happen. So I don't have the traditional kind of, girls just have this plan, and I'm going to be this, I'm going to be that, and I'm going to stick to it, and it's going to happen by this. Like I am just so not calculated in that way. And but I knew I wanted to be in business. What kind of business that would be, I had no clue. So almost 10 years ago, once I was like phasing out of modeling, and I was still working in fashion. I worked at a showroom and I got injured, and I was like, okay, I need to do something else. So what's really, really weird is that I would work all of these other jobs, right? And I would get sick. I would just get like ill. It would be unexplainable. And then when I was doing the stuff that I loved, like, modeling and working in fashion and things like that, I would be healthy again. And I'm just like, okay, what's happening here? So, with that, with knowing that about how my life was going, I'm like, all right, I think it's time for me to do something. And so I had a girlfriend at the time who had three daughters that looked up to me, and she was just like, maybe you should do something for girls, like to inspire them. And I was like, okay. Everybody's always asking me how to get into modeling, and what should I do? And I was just like, all right, maybe I need to start a modeling company, because Strut in its beginning stages, oh boy, like so many companies, like, it's not just this clear path initially. So I say Strut has been in existence for 10 years almost. I have been, filing taxes for it for the last 10 years. But we started as a modeling company. I didn't know what it was. I was just like, okay, somehow I'm going to do this thing, for aspiring models and be a resource that I didn't have when I was growing up. Because, like I said, from 14 to 22, I just kind of ran the hamster wheel trying to figure it out. There really wasn't any clear direction. And even though I hung out with, other models and things like that, there just still, wasn't anything clear or concrete. So that's really why I started the company. I'm like, I can be an inspiration and really give back to people in a way that I wish I had, and lessen the time frame that it would take to just figure it out. Yeah.
I love your story though, because, not every entrepreneur has I had this aha moment and I knew I was supposed to do this, or I've had this burning passion to create this solution to this particular thing in the world. Some of them, get messages from their body like you that say, oh, no, no, that's the wrong path over there. Let's redirect ourselves back here. And so you learned a lot of it or figured a lot of it out just by doing and by trial and error. And as you mentioned, you started it almost 10 years ago now. When you first started, it was a modeling school and it has evolved over time. So explain to us what you do now as a full service boutique modeling agency.
Yeah, wow, to even hear that, I sit in gratitude, honestly, to even think about it, because once I started it, as the modeling school, I always knew that I wanted to get to this point, of being like a full service booking agency. Um, and in the middle area of that was, me transitioning from being a modeling school. I mean, I ran like after school programs. It was just a lot. I was really trying to figure it out, but I stuck with it. Many times I wanted to give up, but somehow it just like kept going. um, and then I became a mother agency, right? Because our industry is so exclusive and it's really like a secret society. So you have to like be on the in to know like what's going on. So I you know was fortunate enough to be on the in-ish, and then I started like forcing my way in even more to just gain some more knowledge on how to really transition Strut. So we transitioned into being a mother agency, which just specializes in the scouting and development and placement process, of models, and little to no booking. And then about almost 2 years ago, I prayed. This is going to sound strange, but I really was at a crossroads in my life. I was getting divorced. I wasn't really sure like what was going to happen with my life. It was a scary time, and I was actually working in early childhood education. So bizarre, like the wildest thing. Um, how did I end up there? I had a small child, and I was like, okay, maybe I should be doing something that would make sense for his life. I don't know. But things moved, and I ended up in this managerial position at an early childhood center. a job that I really was going to decline, honestly. I had every intention of going to the interview and saying no. Like, I'm not going to do this. I'm thinking, how on earth do you go from like being the boss to now going to have to answer for people? Like, my ego was crushed, but what happens in that space is a testimony and a testament to, showing up, and being excellent, even in a space that you don't believe that you belong in, and so I went there every day. I was miserable. But no one knew that because I got dressed, I did my makeup, I showed up on time, I gave input. I mean, like, I really just gave it all, because I do believe in wherever you are, just be the best, even if it's not the place that you want to be at, because you just don't know who's looking. And that's really what happened. Um, I prayed one day because I started going to grad school. Like, actually, I'm getting a master's in early childhood special education, because my mindset is also, be the best. Like in every scenario, I'm always thinking, like, how do I get to the top? Okay,
Mm,
because I just can't like sit in mediocrity. So I was just like, okay, so if I'm gonna be here, like if this is gonna be my life, like I have to do this at the highest level. What does that look like for me? Okay, so I started turning the wheels. I was doing two graduate programs at once, which is really crazy, and raising my son and going through a divorce. But I was like, I have to figure this out. And I prayed one day and I said, God, I know that this is not the way that life works. Like, you don't give a clear path, right? Because we have to go through life in order to be able to like know you and have a relationship with you and like call on you for things. If we know it all, then what is the point of you, right? But I'm begging. I'm like, but I'm begging for you to just tell me show me where I should be going. Like, what should be my next move? Is it education or is it strut? Because I was really at that crossroads. Like, I'm going to give it up. Like, I'm done. And the following day, as God is, who He is. I the president of the school I worked for came to me and asked me about my business. I mean, when I tell you can't make this stuff up, it's like bizarre. She literally came to check in on me, because she knew I was going through personal challenges. And then we started talking. And I told her in that meeting, I was like, I'm unhappy and I asked for a raise. Are you aware? And I remember her saying to me, um, well, what would be your response if you didn't get a raise? Like, what would you do? I said, well, at that point, I would have to do what's best for me, like everybody else does, because I'm also like really, vocal, have always been since I was a child. And then she started asking me about my business. Okay, so tell me what you do, a little bit more like, what is Strut? Like, what do you do? And what would you need to move it to the next level? And I was so clear about what I needed. And she looked at me and said, I want to I want to invest in you. Let's do it. Let's move it to the next level. And I was like, lady, you're crazy. Like, don't sit here and tell me this. So someone else in that position would be like, oh my God. And I was like, listen, you got to be sure you want to do this, And she goes, I've been looking at you and I wanted to talk to you in the summer, but remember, I had prayed the day before. So God
right.
was
You
like,
asked for it.
yeah, I really did. And I was ready and I was clear, to the T as to what I needed to move straight to the next level. And I remember her saying, let's get the ball rolling after your birthday. And I said, no. I was like, no. Meanwhile, like, I'm so bold because, here I am being afforded the opportunity to take my company to the next level. But I'm also laying down the way I wanted to go, right? Because she was like, let's wait until after your birthday. And I was like, no. I was like, if you want to do this, we have to do this now. I'm like, it's going to make my birthday even greater, And she was just like, okay. And so, really, that's how Strut was able to move into this booking space and expand because someone saw me being excellent at something that I absolutely hated to do. It's funny to say, but you couldn't tell because I
Yes.
just showed up and I just did it, for a year and like almost a year and a half. I was there just doing it, and doing it well, right? Like LL Cool J
Right.
style, because
You
it allowed me to move Strut, to this booking level, which is what I've always wanted to do. I remember saying to myself, as we started to evolve and transition, and I would think about how hard it was I felt like I was trying to sell New York to New York, because when you're a mother agency in this market, it's harder to get convince models why they should first start their journey with you before, getting placed with a bigger agency. And I'm like, I just have to be in the same space. Like I have to be at the highest level. I have to compete with them. I have to book, I have to just be cemented here as a full service agency for it to make sense. And I had said that years and years and years and years before and had always kept it in my heart. And here we are now.
and it finally happened because you had an opportunity that came
Yeah,
out of nowhere, as
yeah,
they often do for entrepreneurs. And the other thing about it is because you needed some investment to take the business to the next level, which is
absolutely.
why it is so important for us to fund Black women-owned businesses,
Yeah,
because look at what we can do with them. So the Strut approach to model management is rooted in diversity, individuality, and inclusivity.
yeah.
What does that look like in actuality when you talk about how you run the business, who you represent, the companies and brands you choose to work with? Like, how does that approach come to life?
Ooh. So well, it starts obviously with me as the owner and my partner also as a Black woman. We're both, Black Caribbean women. And so I think that's diversity. It covers the diversity gamut, female, Black, right? But then also when I think about like how, our board is, I am not just representing models of color. And I spoke with I had like another interview recently, and I was saying to them that it's really challenging for me to even get an influx of models of color because it's such a cool thing now that all of the larger agencies like have their claws on models of color. So I'm struggling honestly as a Black woman, and I fight every day and every week in our staff meetings, I'm talking to the team like, I want more diversity. I want more diversity. I want more diversity. I want all of it. I want Black. I want Indian. I want Spanish. I want Native. Just everything. And of course, including Caucasian. So our board is diverse in that way. We have all of those things on our board. I didn't want to just have an agency that represented only Black models because I don't think that that's true diversity. Like our world is very diverse, and I think we need to be all encompassing. So, the board has everything. But then even just like my mindset around it, when I think about the companies that I want to work with, I want to work with everybody. I think that every organization, every brand, is really looking, or at least they should be looking at diversity holistically now and wanting to, work with women and women of color. So that's really like my approach when I'm thinking about clients. Like I want to work with those clients that understand that. But if I'm being honest, I would really love to just book with all of the Black brands that are out there because there's so much that I wouldn't really need to, think about the others. But in this space, because there hasn't really been um, attention given to like modeling agencies and what that looks like and what goes on behind those doors. We think just about the models, like,
Right.
okay, booking Black models, but where are these Black models coming from? And what is the structure, right? So the only other, really significant Black agency that we have like we know of, right, was with Beth Ann Hardison did. And she was so successful with that. And she represented predominantly models of color. I'm doing something a little different. I'm representing everybody, but I'm still a Black woman and, you know, passionate about being that, and wanting to, get the clients that are predominantly Black. But because in this space, it's we're still not there, that, you know, I find myself having to fight even harder, honestly, to work with with clients of color. But I push anyway, and I highlight. I remember my mentor saying to me, like, people shouldn't just want to book with you just because you're a Black woman. And I was like, absolutely they should. I'm like, I cover everything. If they want to book with a woman, if that's their thing, right? Like when they think about, diversity, right? You want to book with a woman, check. You want to book with, a company of color, check. And you want to get good models, check, right? So it's a one-stop shop. You have everything here. There really isn't any need to look anywhere else. But because I'm in it so deeply, I see all of the disparities. And the challenges that I have to fight on a daily basis. But it's important for me. So the style of management is personal to each individual model. How I expect for the team to work with the talent is so like personal, right? Because the modeling agencies are naturally a place of fear for some reason. Like even I was walking to agencies still, and I'm an owner, and feel like intimidated.
Mm.
There's just this aura that's like scary. And so I don't want that here. So that's not what happens when you come in here. I know people like prepare to come see us, and they're like, oh my God, I'm going to an agency. And then they come in and we're just like lovely and warm. And even just last week, I got a report back from a model that came to see us, and they've gone to see like the biggest agencies in the city and said how warm and welcoming they felt coming into Strut. And so that's what's important for me, about just the environment that I create to make sure that it's fun and it's safe and it's still professional, but I don't want anyone leaving deflated because, again, I know what that feels like, right? So everything that I wish I experienced when I was modeling is essentially what I work really diligently to make sure happens at Strut.
Yeah, and you are creating a whole new experience for this next generation of models that is not just, welcoming, but really inclusive,
Yeah.
which we love. You now have a roster of around 100 models. As you mentioned earlier, New York Fashion Week is about to kick off.
Yeah.
Last season, your models walked in some of the top shows. How do you feel about the bookings you've been able to place so far, and what can we expect this season?
Yeah, so oh gosh, even that number, I mean, to get to 100 models in a year and a half, it's crazy. I don't even know how we did it, but we did. I'm really grateful. And so we had a really good season last season, and we're gearing up for this season again, and I'm excited. I have a really good team, so I'm grateful for that. And the bookings are rolling in, and today is I have to look at our charts to see like what things are looking like. But you know we can just look forward to seeing our models, on the biggest runways, and even you know middle, right? So we're everything from New York Fashion Week, the shows, right, the main shows, to doing Flying Solo, which is like another shows that like they just produce their own shows themselves. Um, but just everywhere, we don't discriminate. We just kind of wherever people want to have our models is where we want them to be, because we want the kids to work. We want them to just be out there to be seen. And you know um, as the seasons go by, I just want to see growth. I think for me, it's just about seeing growth. So looking at the type of season that we had last season was really well. I mean, we had, kids in Marnie, and June 179th, and Kenneth Nicholson, and Bathsheba. I mean, we did the Harlem Fashion Row with Nicole Benefiel. So just our hands in all of those pockets. Um, and for me, what I look forward to is just that growing and being able for the list to be longer. And, especially um, for me personally, I mean, I know the agents are excited to just like book with all of the big brands, but for me personally, I want us to get to the place where, all the black designers that show, there is no question about where they are sourcing their models from. Like it's almost synonymous, with their collections and getting models from Strut. Like that's how in sync I would like it to be. Big picture thinking. I don't think it's wishful thinking because a lot of things I have thought into existence, right? Even before we were using the very, very popular word manifest.
Yeah.
I would just always say there's this little thing down on the inside that gnaws at me and I just don't know what it is. But, like I didn't have one word for it. So manifest is probably really appropriate because it just sums it all up. But I had this long explanation always for like what I felt about certain things that I wanted to see come to fruition. So I believe we'll get there. I think, have an opportunity to just share about what I'm doing, with on such an amazing platform like this, like getting the word out about who I am and what we do will open up the floodgates for people to go, oh, okay, well, yeah, like kind of like what you said. Like how did we not know about this? How did we not know her? Well, we're here and
We're
we
here.
found it.
Yes. Now you know. Before we let you go, I have to ask, you're part of a program for New York City small businesses to advance Black entrepreneurs through mentorship. What are some of the most common questions you get from other business owners? And what's your best advice for other entrepreneurs, especially Black women entrepreneurs?
Okay, so the question that I get all the time is um, maybe not even a question, but more like a statement like, you work really hard. And I'm like, yeah. Oh, it's, when you become an entrepreneur, it's, you think you want to do it because it affords you like freedom and flexibility, and there are moments of that, but you have to be really deliberate about it. And I think you get there once you've been at it for a long time, but in the beginning phases it's really a grind and you're constantly just working. And even 10 years in, I'm still like constantly working. Like my mind is always going. Even it A lot of what I do is not necessarily like physical labor, but mental and emotional. My gosh, it's like insane. So, you know, uh, I think that's really it. Just like that statement of you work so hard, and yes, you have to. You have to work hard in order to, see like progress and growth for your brand, your company, whatever it is you want to do. Um, and then, as far as advice is concerned, because I do believe it's important to give back and mentor, and and I'm also mentored, right? Like that is important. So that would be the first part is like seeking out mentorship. Many years ago, I was taught this, and it stayed with me about the three types of relationships you should have. And it should be, your peers, right? Like peer relationships, because y'all are like equally like on par with each other. And so you can relate to things. And then you have mentors that obviously are ahead of you and in a position where you want to be so you can learn from. And then you have mentees who you are imparting wisdom that you've gained along the way. So, like having relationships that are centered around that, like thinking and being really intentional about that. But then also, for me, because this has been my experience, it's just, showing up and being excellent, no matter where you are, right? Like, I am a testament of staying the course, having faith and belief in yourself and your dream. Um, and even if your dream isn't really clear cut, like you just know that you want something and you want it to look and feel a certain way, but you don't have all of the details mapped out. But, holding fast to that and going to that job that you don't really like, but being excellent regardless and still working on your craft on the side. Um, and it may not be that someone will notice and approach you the way that my trajectory turned out, but that it will strengthen your skill set, on the side. And then, somehow like an opportunity will open up for you. It's not going to all look the same as anybody else's, but I do believe in just making sure that you're giving 100% to everything, because it's really like the training ground. Like if I didn't apply the discipline and, the work ethic and all of those things in that position where I felt like was so beneath me and like, ew, like what would people think? I wouldn't be able to be ready to now run my company at a higher level, and have staff and handle all of these models. Like I wouldn't have, I would have missed the training step of
Mhm.
that. And then I would be falling apart now because it's really intense. Like once you get to a level of I always say that it's one thing to be an entrepreneur and it's just you and you're like doing your thing, but then when you start adding employees in the mix, and then in our case, models and tons of them, with all kinds of personalities and backgrounds and stories, like it's a lot to manage. So just in essence, don't negate like the building blocks. You just want to like stay the course and not be afraid to do the dirty work or the work that you don't enjoy, because it really is fundamental, foundational, and it will help you when it's your time for your big moment.
Thank you so much, Shaw, for sharing your small business success story. Everyone out there, please take a look at the company website, strutmodels.com. And you can also follow them on Facebook at Strut Models or on Instagram at Strut Models NYC. Check out the podcast channel on blackenterprise.com to find Sisters Inc. and other podcasts from Black Enterprise editors, writers, and experts. Be sure to subscribe to Sisters Inc. on Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, Spotify, or YouTube. And if you like what you hear, show us some love by leaving a 5-star review or put a sister on by spreading the word. This is Elisa Gums with Sisters Inc. for Black Enterprise. Thank you for listening.